Anger is like a storm rising from the ground of our being. We cannot stop it, but we can learn not to be swept away by it. Have you ever felt a fire rise inside your chest so suddenly it seemed as if it wanted to consume everything in front of you? A careless remark, a fleeting glance, or an insignificant action from someone close so trivial on the surface can suddenly feel like sparks igniting dry tinder. Your breath grows shallow, your pulse pounds like war drums, your face flushes as if a volcano had erupted within. In that moment, words shoot from your mouth like arrows loosed from a bow, impossible to call back once released. And then, as the heat subsides and the storm passes, silence returns. Yet what remains is not peace, but a hollow aftertaste of regret. In that quiet, you wonder if only I had paused, if only I had been softer. Perhaps I would not have hurt the other, and I would not have scorched myself. The Buddha taught anger is a blaze that can burn down an entire forest of virtue. Years of patient kindness, of gentle words and generous deeds can turn to ash in a single reckless moment of rage. The serenity we long to cultivate within becomes hidden behind dense fogs of violent emotion. Anger is not merely heat, it is weight. Like a heavy stone suddenly cast into a still pond, it distorts every reflection. The mind, once clear as polished glass, becomes fractured, each image twisted by rippling distortion. In rage, reality is no longer seen as it is. It becomes a warped picture painted by pain. Yet even the fiercest sandstorm sweeps past. Anger, too, does not linger forever. What matters is whether we are awake enough to recognize it as it rises, to pause before feeding it to breathe, and refrain from pouring more fuel onto its flames. If we return to awareness beneath the turbulence, we discover a ground that has always remained intact, like the bedrock beneath shifting dunes. I once encountered an elderly man on a mountain pilgrimage. He carried a bundle of wood across his bent shoulders, each step pressed down by the load. His back curved under the weight, yet his face glowed with a strange tranquility. Curious, I asked about his calm demeanor. He chuckled softly and told me that in his younger years, he too had been consumed by anger. A single harsh word from a loved one could keep him sleepless for nights. Then one day, while crossing a rapid stream with his bundle of firewood, he slipped. The bundle fell into the current, and as he tried to pull it back, the torrent dragged him down as well. In the struggle, he realized that the harder he clung, the more he risked being drowned. Only when he let go did he manage to swim to safety. He looked at me with kind eyes and whispered, "Anger is just like that bundle of wood. If you clutch it tightly, it drags you under. Only by releasing it do you survive." His words struck me like a bell echoing across the valley. Each time we cling to fury, we tie ourselves to a sinking weight. Others may toss a pebble, but it is we who bind it to our hearts until it becomes a boulder dragging us down. The Buddha once said, "When you grasp a burning ember to throw at another, it is your own hand that is burned first." Rage harms not only the one it strikes, but also the vessel that carries it. Modern science affirms this ancient wisdom. During anger, the heart races, blood pressure rises, and toxic chemicals flood the body, weakening the immune system. Psychology reminds us that the invisible wounds of fury, resentment, bitterness, mistrust can scar far deeper than any visible cut. Thus, to release anger is not an act of kindness toward others alone. It is first and foremost an act of mercy toward ourselves. For anger is like an uninvited intruder pounding at the door. We cannot stop it from knocking, but we can choose not to open. If we sit still, simply observing it will eventually leave on its own. Look out the window, and you will see leaves drifting gently to the ground, unblaming of the wind that has carried them away. If only we could let go of rage as lightly as a leaf surrenders to the season, how many gray days of our lives would dissolve into golden peace. Anger is not an enemy to wage war against, nor is it a master to obey blindly. It is like fog rolling through a valley, dense, blinding, but never permanent. Recognize it, smile at it, and it will disperse. Cling to it, and it thickens into a storm. So you see, anger has many faces. It is a storm in the chest, a stone in the river, a burden on the shoulders, a shadow in the fog. Yet peace is never lost. It waits quietly, like the mountain peak above the clouds, like the desert that still holds life beneath its cracked earth. The only choice is whether we grip the storm or release it and return to the sky of clarity. And this journey begins with a single breath. Inhaling, we recognize anger is here. Exhaling, we smile, let it go. We allow the wind to carry it, leaving the heart clear as a mirror. Peace has never truly departed. It waits for us to turn back to open the gate to return home. But there is a deeper truth. Anger does not simply vanish after it erupts. It leaves traces, fissures like cracks spreading silently across a wall. They may be invisible at first, but over time they weaken the foundation until collapse is inevitable. What feels like a fleeting quarrel may leave an echo in another's heart that resounds for years. The scriptures remind us that in anger, one loses the capacity to see clearly. It is like being caught in a desert storm, eyes stung by grains of sand, unable to perceive the path before us. Words and actions born in that blindness carve suffering into ourselves and others. I once met a middle-aged woman during a short retreat at a monastery. She confided that her bond with her daughter had grown distant because of a single outburst. Her daughter longed to pursue art, but the mother wished for her to choose a safe career. In a moment of rage, she lashed out, "You will never accomplish anything meaningful." That sentence, she said, closed a door in her daughter's eyes. Years of tenderness had been fractured by one explosion of anger. As she spoke, an image came to me, a glass vase painstakingly crafted, fired in the kiln, smoothed with care. And yet one careless slip sends it crashing into shards. Anger is that slip of the hand. It shatters what has taken years to build. The Buddha warned, when you hold on to anger, you drink poison and expect the other to die. Truly, who has ever felt lighter after an outburst? Instead, we are left fevered. Our minds clouded, our chests burning. We think we strike at the other, but in reality, we swallow the venom ourselves. Modern medicine echoes. This constant anger taxes the nervous system, constricts vessels, strains the heart, and paves the way for illness. Yet the most subtle destruction lies not in the body, but in the psyche. Trust, corroded, affection, eroded, and hearts once tender, turned cold and distant. I remember speaking with an old man who admitted that in his youth, he was hot-tempered, erupting over trivial matters. For years, he lived exhausted, surrounded by people who slowly drifted away. Only in his twilight did he sigh. Anger never conquered anyone. It only took away family health and joy. In my mind, his words summoned the image of a torch held too long. At first, we believe it to be a weapon of protection, a light to guide us. But soon, the heat sears our hands, and sparks fall onto our clothes, threatening to consume us. What seemed like strength becomes the very cause of harm. So what must we do when anger arises? The Buddha did not tell us to bury it or deny it. He told us to recognize it. Like hearing a knock on the door, We need not open, but we must acknowledge. We can whisper inwardly, "This is anger." Naming it is like turning on a lamp in a darkened room. Once illuminated shadows lose their grip. A Zen master once said, "Each mindful breath is a cup of water poured onto the flames of anger. With a single pause, a single inhalation, and exhalation, a space opens between us and the storm. And within that space, serenity quietly returns. When serenity arises, we realize that what ignited us was often small, like a scratch on a mirror that appears massive only when we press our eyes too close. Step back, and it becomes but a speck on a vast reflection. Life will always bring careless words, disappointments, misunderstandings. But we hold the power to choose our response. We can be dragged by the storm, or we can return to the still point of our breath. For in truth, anger is only a passing visitor, while peace is our true home. Resentment is like drinking salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. Ancient proverb. There is a hidden truth about anger. It never ends at the moment of eruption. Even after the shouting fades and silence settles, something remains like cracks spreading across a wall. At first, they are invisible hairline fractures no one notices, but with time they widen until the entire structure weakens. What seems like a fleeting quarrel can leave scars echoing in another's heart for years. Buddhist teachings remind us, when anger overtakes us, we lose the ability to see truth. It is like standing in a sandstorm. Our eyes sting with grit, the horizon disappears, and we stumble without direction. Only when the wind settles do we realize the path we strayed from and the damage we left behind. I once met a woman at a short retreat who confessed that her relationship with her daughter had fractured because of one bitter moment. The daughter wanted to pursue the arts, but the mother insisted on a more secure profession. In frustration, she blurted out, "You will never achieve anything worthwhile." Those words, spoken in a blaze, slammed shut a door in her daughter's eyes. Years of nurturing, of shared laughter became fragile as glass. In my mind, I pictured not a clay pot this time, but a finely woven tapestry. Thread after thread had been patiently interlaced, moments of care, years of effort, yet one rough tug unraveled entire sections. Anger, like that careless tug, undoes in seconds what took years to weave. The Buddha once said, "Holding on to anger is like grasping a sharp blade. It cuts the hand of the one who grips it." Truly, has anyone ever emerged lighter after such moments? Instead, our minds feel like a maze filled with echoes of our own bitterness. We imagine that we are punishing the other, but in truth, the labyrinth traps only ourselves. Modern psychology agrees, anger narrows perception, distorts memory, and ties us into knots of thought that choke our own joy. Medicine shows the cost in blood pressure, heart strain, and immune depletion. But what no scan can capture is the erosion of trust, the way love slowly bleeds away, like water dripping from a cracked vessel. I recall an elderly teacher who admitted that when he was young, his temper made him shout at anyone who crossed him. For decades, he thought he was strong because people stepped back from his fury. But later in life, sitting alone in a quiet house, he realized his voice had driven companions away. He told me, "I thought I was building walls to protect myself. Instead, I built a prison around my own heart." His words painted in my mind the image of a fortress, thick towering walls but cold and empty inside. Anger convinces us we are defending our dignity, but it only seals us away from warmth. So what must we do when the storm rises again? The Buddha did not teach suppression. He did not suggest burying emotions like corpses beneath the floor. He urged us to recognize. Recognition is not weakness. It is awareness. Like someone entering a hall of mirrors, we acknowledge this reflection is anger. By naming it, we keep from mistaking its distorted images for reality. A Zen teacher once compared it to walking across a frozen river. When cracks appear beneath your feet, you must pause, listen, and tread with care. So too with anger, if we do not stop, the ice will split, plunging us into freezing depths. But if we wait still and aware, the danger passes. I remember another story. A young man once told me that a comment from his superior haunted him for days. "Your report lacks detail," the man had said. The words were simple, perhaps even constructive. Yet the young man heard them as condemnation, as if the entire room mocked him. He replayed the moment again and again, each time adding more venom to what had been neutral. Only later did he overhear the same superior praising a colleague. This presentation is thorough and well supported. In that instant, he realized his insult was never an insult at all, only a reflection distorted in his own cracked mirror. Anger creates such illusions. It is like wearing tinted glasses. Everything we see takes on the shade of our mood. The world itself is not red or black, but our lenses convince us otherwise. The gift is that we can remove those lenses. A single breath, a single pause gives us the chance to ask, am I seeing things as they are, or only as my wounded feelings paint them? That question is like opening a window in a stuffy room. Fresh air enters, and what seemed suffocating becomes bearable. A Zen parable compares anger to a stray dog barking at our gate. If we throw scraps of food, it lingers howling louder. If we simply wait, giving it nothing, it eventually slinks away. Likewise, every time we replay old arguments in our mind, every time we rehearse comebacks or craft revenge, we are feeding the beast. Stop feeding it, and it leaves. There is a practice known as stopping. When fury rises, we halt not only words, not only actions, but even the spinning wheel of thoughts. Like halting a carriage pulled by wild horses before it plunges down a ravine. To stop is not denial. It is protection. We grant our hearts a clearing in the forest where they may breathe before journeying on. In that pause, a realization dawns. I am not my anger. This truth seems simple, but it changes everything. To say I am angry merges our identity with the feeling. To say there is anger in me creates space. It is like walking in heavy rain. If you think I am the rain, you drown. If you know I am walking through the rain, you can open an umbrella, wait under a tree, or simply trust that the storm will pass. A teacher once told his disciple, "If you were truly anger itself, then where is it when you are asleep? Where is it when you laugh with friends? You are not anger. You are the one who notices it." The hall burst into laughter, but in that laughter was liberation. Emotions are like drifting clouds. Yes, but not only clouds. They are also like fog that hides a valley, like curtains drawn across a window, like migrating birds that pass overhead. They come and they go, but the sky, the true self, remains vast and unchanged. In daily life, we often confuse what we have with what we are. We have sadness, but we are not sadness. We have fear, but we are not fear. We have anger, but anger does not define us. To remember this is to sit in the driver's seat of our own being, not as a passenger tossed by every turn. Imagine sitting on a train gazing out the window. Scenery rushes by, fields, factories, cities, forests. Sometimes beautiful, sometimes bleak, but the passenger remains seated, carried forward. Our emotions are those shifting landscapes. They are not the traveler. They do not dictate who we are, only what passes before our view. To practice mindfulness is to remember this. To look at anger as we might look at scenery. I see you. You are here, but you will pass. A Zen master once instructed, place your hand on your heart when anger surges, feel the rhythm, and say gently, this is anger. Like switching on a lamp, the room changes. Recognition loosens its grip. Try it, and you will discover the simple act of naming emotion halves its power. Like a child crying in the dark when called by name and held the sobs subside. Anger, too, is calmed by recognition, not denial. The crucial point is not whether anger visits for anger is part of being human. The question is, will we let it rule us? To remember that we are not the storm, but the witness of the storm is all ready to step back into peace. Peace is not elsewhere. It is always present, a quiet companion walking beside us. Anger is only a figure that sometimes cuts in front, obscuring the view. One step back and we see peace again. Yet there is a paradox. The more we struggle against anger, the tighter it binds us. Many try to bury it, to pretend it is gone, but buried embers smolder under ash, waiting for a breeze to ignite them again. The Buddha did not tell us to smother emotion, but to transform it. Transformation begins with embrace. When we acknowledge anger mindfully, we cradle it like a mother cradling a crying child. The child does not need scolding nor abandonment. It needs recognition and warmth. I once saw a mother soothe her injured son. He screamed, face-red limbs flailing. She did not shout. She did not demand silence. She simply gathered him, whispering, I know it hurts. I know you are crying. Soon his sobs softened into hiccups and then sleep. Mindfulness is that embrace. Not judgment, not suppression, not indulgence, simply presence. Breathing in, we hold our anger in awareness. Breathing out, we allow its space to dissolve. A Zen master once said, when you drink tea in mindfulness, you also drink peace. Peace permeates the sip, the breath, the step. When peace infuses each moment, anger cannot flare into wildfire. I recall joining a walking meditation retreat. Each step was deliberate, grounded. At first, my mind resisted tugging toward unfinished tasks. But as I settled into the rhythm, a tenderness spread through me. I realized a step can heal if it is taken with awareness. For each step is a reminder I am not running with anger. I am returning to the present. Anger survives only when it monopolizes the space of the heart. But when that space is filled with breath, with attentive steps, with silence, anger has no foothold. It dissolves like mist under the morning sun. A student once asked his master, how do I banish anger? The master replied, do not banish. Light a lamp in the dark room. When there is light, darkness disappears by itself. So too with anger. We need not wrestle it nor exile it. We need only illuminate it with awareness. And in that illumination, we rediscover a simple truth. We always hold the choice. Not the choice to erase anger, but the choice to answer it with clarity. We hold in our hands a medicine not miraculous, but utterly real. Our breath, our steps, our stillness. Each time we use it, we affirm, I choose peace over rage. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Viktor Frankl. We have seen that anger is not simply an eruption. It is something that grows when nourished. The real danger is not the first spark, but how we fan it with our thoughts, our words, and our memories. Think back to the last time you argued with someone. Perhaps the quarrel ended in minutes, yet hours later, you were still replaying it in your mind. You rehearsed every word, every glance, adding imagined tones of contempt or layers of insult that may never have been there. Each replay poured oil into the furnace. Each assumption became another stone in the labyrinth of echoes. By the time you saw the person again, you were no longer seeing them as they were, but through a maze of distorted reflections you had built. The Buddha once said, "The mind is a painter, painting the world of its own colors." In anger, the brush dips into the darkest ink. The same gesture that could be read as neutral becomes hostile. The same silence that might mean nothing is heard as rejection. The world does not change, but the picture we project upon it darkens. I met a young man who told me how a casual remark from his colleague haunted him for days. "You should double-check your numbers," the colleague said. A simple suggestion, but the young man heard ridicule. For nights, he brooded, convinced he was being undermined. Later, he overheard the same colleague advising another, "You did well, but make sure you double-check the figures." In that moment, the scales fell from his eyes. His suffering had been built from shadows, illusions in his own labyrinth. Anger deceives us like a desert mirage. From afar, we are certain we see water glistening on the horizon. We march toward it with determination, only to find sand upon arrival. Yet even after realizing the illusion, the thirst it provokes lingers. So too with anger, its images may be false, but their grip on our heart remains unless we awaken fully. The question then is not merely how to calm anger when it bursts forth, but how to prevent ourselves from feeding it day after day. For anger is like rust upon metal. Leave it unattended, and it spreads silently, eating away its strength until one day the bridge collapses beneath our feet. A Zen teacher once said, "Do not invite anger to stay for tea." He meant that when the knock comes at the door, do not pull out chairs, do not pour cups, do not let it linger as a guest of honor. Notice it, acknowledge it, but do not treat it as family. There is a practice called stopping, not suppression, but halting the cycle. When anger arises, stop the rehearsal, the imagined arguments, the endless courtroom where we play judge and victim. Stopping is like pressing a hand against a turning wheel. Without fuel, the motion slows. At first, this seems impossible. The mind clings to anger as vines cling to a tree, wrapping tighter each time we try to shake them off. But when we stop watering those vines with stories and judgments, they begin to wither. Slowly, the tree breathes again. The Buddha taught that every emotion has roots. Anger is often rooted in two things: a wounded self-image and unmet expectations. The self-image is fragile, like thin glass, appearing solid, yet cracking with the smallest knock. Expectations are like invisible ropes we tie around others. You should speak this way, behave that way, fulfill my script. When they break free from those ropes, we feel betrayed, though in truth, we were only tightening knots around ourselves. I remember a friend who spent his birthday furious because no one called. All day he seethed, feeling forgotten. Late at night, a message came. "Forgive me for not calling earlier. I was overwhelmed, but you were in my thoughts." In an instant, his anger dissolved. He realized his misery was not caused by neglect, but by the story he had written in his own mind. Life is filled with such moments. We expect a smile, a word of recognition, an act of care. When it does not come, the ropes of expectation pull taut, and anger is born. Yet those ropes are of our own weaving. To understand this is to loosen the knots. Imagine a bridge swaying in the wind. If you grip the railing with rigid fear, every movement feels catastrophic. But if you soften your body and sway with the bridge, the motion becomes tolerable. Expectations work the same way. Rigid, they cause us to crack. Flexible, they carry us across. A teacher once said, "No one can truly hurt us without our permission." At first, this sounds harsh, even dismissive. Yet consider words are only sounds. Our reception determines whether they become daggers or breezes. A farmer once told me his land was mocked as barren, unfit for crops. He said nothing, only planted. Seasons passed and his fields grew golden. When those who mocked him asked for rice, he gave freely. His answer was not a quarrel, but abundance. The insult had been powerless because he never let it pierce. Mindfulness practice is not about extinguishing anger instantly, but about tracing it to its source. Is this fury truly about the other person? Or is it an old wound within me now throbbing again? When we dare to ask, anger shifts from a weapon to a mirror. It is like looking into a fractured mirror. At first, we see only broken images. But when we lean closer, we realize the fractures are within the glass, not in our face. The world is not hostile. Our perception is wounded. I once met a man at retreat who confessed that his temper with his wife and children stemmed from childhood scars, years of scolding, neglect, shame. His present-day anger was only the echo of ancient wounds. When he saw this, he wept. His tears were not weakness. They were the first drops of healing rain. The Buddha said every seed can transform if tended with care. Even wounds can become teachers if we hold them gently. Place your hand on your chest, breathe, and whisper, "This is my pain." To admit this is not defeat, it is the beginning of release. Self-healing means forgiving ourselves as well. Often we rage against others because we have never learned softness toward ourselves. When we whisper inwardly, "It is all right. I too am only human. Still learning love," the vines loosen and the heart rests. Mindfulness is like an hourglass. Each breath is a grain of sand falling, reminding us that nothing is permanent. If anger feels unbearable, remember the sand is slipping. This moment will pass. Do not freeze in it forever. One master compared mindfulness to a balcony in the middle of a crowded city. Down below, traffic roars, horns blare, arguments rage. But from the balcony, you hear the noise without being pulled into it. Anger can surge in the streets of the mind, but if we stand in awareness, we remain above, not below. Some believe mindfulness requires long hours of meditation, but it can be present in small acts, drinking tea, washing hands, walking across a courtyard. Each act, if attended, becomes a return to the balcony where anger loses its grip. The Buddha said, "There is no path to peace. Peace is the path." To breathe mindfully is already to walk that path. Yet recognition and awareness are not enough if we still cling. The next step is release. For if we identify anger but keep it in our pocket, it weighs us down all the same. Someone once told me, holding anger is like carrying a glass of water. For a few minutes it feels light. For hours your arm aches. For days it paralyzes you. To put the glass down is not weakness, it is wisdom. I recall an old monk telling a story of two travelers. One carried a sack of stones across the mountains. The other carried nothing. When asked why he did not drop the sack, the first replied, "Because I have carried it so long it feels part of me." Anger becomes like that sack. We cling because it has accompanied us, not because it helps us. Release requires courage. To let go is to admit we do not need victory in every debate. We do not need to be right in every memory. Peace in the heart is worth more than triumph in argument. The Buddha said, "Those who release are the richest, for they own the sky." When we let go, We are no longer caged by grudges. The space once crowded by anger fills with compassion and wisdom, and with each act of letting go, we grow lighter like a bird, realizing the cage door is open, spreading its wings at last. Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal rule. The Dhammapada. Anger is never just a momentary spark. It is often the residue of countless disappointments left unspoken. When these sediments settle in the heart, they harden like layers of stone, and when one more grievance falls upon them, even if small, the pressure breaks everything open, like a staircase crumbling beneath weight that has been gathering for years. I once spoke with a man who confessed that his rage at his friend was not truly about the forgotten appointment that triggered it. It was about years of feeling unvalued, unseen. The forgotten meeting was only the feather that tipped the scale already loaded with rocks. This is why unchecked resentment grows dangerous. It is not the single spark, but the tinder left waiting. Buddhist wisdom teaches us anger does not arise out of nothing. It is a continuation. Every outburst is the echo of older wounds. Without awareness, we allow those echoes to magnify as though shouting into a canyon. The sound returns louder, harsher, as if someone else were screaming back at us. In truth, much of our fury is not aimed at the present, but at the ghosts of the past. A parent's sharp tone echoes in the voice of a colleague. A childhood humiliation repeats in a small disagreement with a partner. The present becomes stained with ink spilled long ago. But the page of life is not ruined by one drop of ink. If we stop scribbling over it with bitterness, the blot eventually dries. We can still write beauty around it. It is only when we keep smearing that the parchment becomes unreadable. I once met a young woman who lived with perpetual anger toward her father. She told me that when he criticized her teenage decisions, she felt as if her entire identity was under siege. Now in her 30s, long after moving away, she admitted that even her partner's casual comments stirred old fires. "It's like my compass spins without north," she said, "and I don't know which direction is real." Her words revealed what anger often does. It disorients us, leaving us lost in storms that have nothing to do with the present landscape. To heal requires us to recognize when the compass needle is spinning wildly, to place it gently on still ground until it finds true north again. How do we place it down? Through stopping breathing, observing not to deny, but to see clearly. The Buddha compared mindfulness to a lantern carried in darkness. At first, the wind of anger flickers the flame, threatening to extinguish it. But if we cup our hands, shielding the lantern, the light steadies. So too with awareness. Our breath, our calm presence shields the flame of clarity from the gusts of rage. Once steadied, we can begin to see deeper. Beneath every eruption lies a wound. Beneath every scream lies sorrow. Anger is only the mask. The face beneath it is pain. Imagine the strings of a harp. When one string is wound too tight, it snaps, sending a jarring sound. Anger is that snapped string. It is tension pushed beyond limit. But if we learn to tune the strings gently, the instrument produces harmony instead of noise. So too with the heart. When we live stretched thin by expectations, obligations, suppressed desires, one extra tug breaks us. Awareness is the gentle tuning loosening before the snap. A teacher once told me that when anger comes, he places a hand on his stomach and another on his chest, simply feeling the rise and fall of his breath. "This is my way of tuning," he said. "It reminds me that my body is more real than my stories. Stories feed anger, but breath dissolves it." Another woman shared how she dealt with old grudges. She would look at faded photographs of her childhood, the ones where her parents seemed harsh or distant, Instead of clinging to bitterness, she whispered to those images, "You too were learning. You too were wounded." In doing so, she saw not tyrants, but fellow travelers struggling with their own storms. Slowly, her anger softened, not erased overnight, but like an old photograph fading under sunlight, its outlines growing gentler. Forgiveness in Buddhist teaching is not pretending nothing happened. It is recognizing the humanity beneath the harm. To forgive is not to erase memory, but to release its grip. It is to realize that keeping someone locked in the chest of our anger only keeps us locked beside them. Without the key of compassion, we both remain prisoners. When we forgive, we are not excusing. We are choosing freedom. I recall a man who spent years plotting revenge against a business partner who had betrayed him. His nights were sleepless, consumed by schemes of repayment. Then, during a retreat, he suddenly asked himself, "Why do I spend more time with my enemy in imagination than with my family in reality?" The realization struck like a bell. He saw that he had locked himself in a cell with the one he despised most. That day, he decided to stop rehearsing revenge. He said later, "Forgiving him did not free him. It freed me." Anger feels like strength, but it weakens us. It feels like control, but it blinds us. It feels like justice, but it robs us of joy. The Buddha offered an image. If someone hands you a hot coal, you need not grasp it. Let it drop. The pain lies in the holding, not the coal itself. Forgiveness is the act of letting the coal fall. This does not mean we remain silent before injustice. Rather, it means we act from clarity, not venom. Anger clouds judgment. Compassion sharpens it. When we respond with calm, our words cut deeper than any shout. A master once silenced a heated debate by simply sitting quietly. His stillness spread like ripples. The voices fell. When asked why he did not argue, he replied, "When the wind stops, the dust settles. Only then can the road be seen." The path to peace is not far away. It begins each time we choose not to answer insult with insult, not to repay injury with injury. Each such moment is like placing a brick in a new foundation, a staircase leading upward instead of crumbling beneath us. Over time, that staircase grows strong. Each mindful step, each act of compassion, repairs what anger once tore down. The house of our heart becomes not a prison of resentment, but a sanctuary of peace. And in that sanctuary, anger may still knock, but it will no longer find residence. It will pass like a traveler who, finding no lodging, moves on. Holding on to anger is like grasping a live coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. The Buddha anger always promises immediacy, the sense that striking back will give relief, that raising the voice will restore dignity, that unleashing words will set us free. But once the storm passes, what remains? Not triumph, but fragments like an hourglass shattered, its sand scattered across the floor. Time is lost, and we cannot gather it back. When we lash out, we imagine we are strong. Yet true strength is not in eruption, but in restraint. Consider the ship that sails without an anchor. At the first winds, it drifts into turbulence, helpless against the waves. A vessel with anchor can withstand storms, holding steady until the sea calms. So too with the mind, anger makes us drift. Awareness roots us. The mask of fury often hides what lies beneath. Anger is a cracked mask splitting to reveal sorrow, fear, longing. When a loved one forgets our needs, we shout not only because of the moment's slight, but because of a deeper loneliness we have carried. The mask shouts, but the face beneath it weeps. If we can look beyond the cracks, we discover not an enemy within us, but a wounded child asking to be seen. I once knew a man who exploded at his partner for small household issues, an unwashed dish, a misplaced object. Yet when he finally sat in silence during a retreat, tears poured down his face. He confessed he had grown up in a home where nothing he did was good enough. Each small mistake in adulthood reawakened that childhood sting. His anger was not against dishes or objects. It was a garden overrun by weeds of old pain. A garden left untended does not grow only flowers. It grows whatever seeds fall upon it. Anger is like invasive weeds, quick to sprout, eager to dominate. Without tending, they choke the blossoms. But when we kneel, pull gently at the roots, and water with care, the flowers return. So it is with our hearts. Without mindfulness, weeds of resentment overrun us. With care, compassion blooms again. The Buddha reminded us nothing arises without cause. Anger is not spontaneous. It is conditioned. Trace it back, and you will find unmet needs, unhealed wounds, unspoken fears. To heal anger is to tend its roots, not merely cut its leaves. But why do we resist this work? Because the bridge is broken. Imagine trying to cross a river to reach another, but halfway the bridge collapses. In anger, that collapse happens between hearts. We long to connect, but words splinter the planks, and we stand stranded on opposite shores. Without patience and listening, no bridge can be rebuilt. Listening is the first plank. Not listening to argue, but to understand. The Buddha called it deep, listening a silence that invites another's pain to reveal itself. In such listening, anger softens. For anger is often the cry of one who has never felt heard. I recall a story of a child who screamed endlessly, drawing his mother's frustration. Yet instead of scolding, she crouched down, looked into his eyes, and whispered, "Tell me what hurts." The child sobbed, "I thought you forgot me." In that moment, the scream turned to trembling quiet. Anger was only a mask hiding longing. If only we approached each other with such listening, how many quarrels would fade before they ignited anger? Not only damages relationships, it hollows us out inside. Like an abandoned house, it fills with echoes of wind, each gust rattling loose shutters, shaking the foundation further. We may appear strong on the outside, but within, we are empty rooms, haunted by voices of bitterness. Have you ever entered such a house? Its floors creak, its walls flake, and its silence is not peace, but desolation. Anger makes our hearts like that. Structures still standing, but no longer homes. The good news is that even abandoned houses can be restored. Windows can be mended, floors repaired, gardens replanted. But first, someone must decide this place is worth saving. When we decide our hearts are worth healing, restoration begins. Sometimes restoration begins with the smallest act. Lighting a candle, though the wax melts unevenly, still brings light. Anger may distort us, but each small act of kindness rebalances. The candle does not complain that one side burns faster. It simply gives light. So too with us, even when scarred by anger, we can still shine. Each smile, each gesture of patience, each word spoken gently is wax melting into light. Yet beware, small acts of anger can trigger avalanches. A single stone tossed into a canyon can rattle down mountains, bringing a flood of destruction. Words are such stones. Spoken in haste, they ricochet, strike, and multiply, unleashing consequences far greater than we intended. A student once confessed, "I lost my job because of anger." His supervisor gave him feedback, and he replied with insults. One afternoon of rage undid years of effort. He said, "It was like pushing one stone and watching the whole mountain collapse on me." This is why mindfulness matters, not because it makes us saints, but because it prevents avalanches. One pause, one breath may keep the mountain intact. The Buddha taught, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." When anger rises, silence is often the greatest word. Silence is not defeat, it is wisdom. I once sat with a monk who told me, "When I feel anger, I imagine placing a pebble in my mouth. I cannot speak until the pebble dissolves." Of course, it was metaphorical, but the point was clear time and patience cool the tongue, preventing words that cannot be unsaid. Each time we restrain, we are not suppressing, we are redirecting. Like a river diverted into irrigation channels, our energy can nourish instead of destroy. We must remember anger is powerful energy. Left unchecked, it demolishes. Transformed, it builds. The same fire that burns a house can also forge tools. The same storm that uproots trees can also clear the air. Transformation is the key, not denial, and transformation begins with recognition. This is anger, but I am not anger. With each breath, we step back. With each pause, the hourglass restores, the bridge repairs, the candle shines steadier. And little by little, we remember, the heart was never meant to be a battlefield. It was meant to be a garden, a home, a lantern guiding the way. Anger is an acid that can do more harm to the vessel in which it is stored than to anything on which it is poured. Mark Twain. Anger often disguises itself as righteousness. We believe we are defending truth, protecting dignity, fighting for justice. But beneath this armor lies fragility. It is like a locked gate in a forgotten garden, on the outside iron, and unyielding, yet within the flowers wilt from lack of care. The gate stands tall, but it protects emptiness. I once met a man who prided himself on being fearlessly outspoken. His voice thundered in every meeting. His temper kept others silent. Yet when I asked him privately, he admitted he often felt isolated, unseen, misunderstood. His anger was not strength. It was the rusting gate he stood behind, barring others from entering the garden of his vulnerability. Anger is also like a mirror fogged by breath. We lean in, searching for clarity, but all we see is distortion. The face reflected is not reality, but a blurred version shaped by our heated state. Only when we step back and allow the mirror to clear do we recognize the truth of the other and of ourselves. Think of the dormant volcano. For decades it appears harmless, covered with green forests and villages at its base. People forget its nature. Then one day it awakens, spewing fire and ash, devastating everything nearby. Anger repressed within us behaves the same. Suppressed for years, it suddenly erupts with destructive force. The damage is not only to others, but to ourselves, for the eruption leaves scars that take years to heal. This is why mindfulness is not about burying emotion, but about tending to it as it arises. If we deny the rumblings beneath the ground, we invite catastrophe. If we listen early, acknowledging small tremors, we can release pressure before eruption. A Zen monk once told me, "Every time I feel irritation, I ring a bell within myself." His metaphor stayed with me. He explained even cracked bells can ring. The sound may be rough, imperfect, but it is still a reminder. Similarly, our anger can serve as a bell reminding us that we are hurting, that something inside asks for attention. The crack does not make the bell useless, it makes it human. In this way, anger becomes not only a danger, but also a teacher. I recall a woman who carried resentment toward her sister for decades. Every family gathering she spoke little, yet her silence was louder than words. She told me she felt like a puppet tangled in its own strings. Each time she tried to move closer, the knots pulled tighter. Only when she admitted "I am still hurt" and allowed herself to cry did the strings loosen. The puppet could move again, not perfectly, but freely enough to embrace. Unacknowledged anger ties us in knots. A single phrase from years ago can keep us bound stiff, unable to dance with life. But once spoken aloud, once met with compassion, those strings unravel. Books left unread gather dust, but they do not disappear. Anger is like those books. The stories within them of pain, of betrayal, of unmet needs remain until we choose to open them, read them with compassion, and then place them back, not as hidden burdens, but as completed chapters. Without this, the library of our heart becomes heavy with dust, each volume a weight we carry unconsciously. A teacher once said, "Every anger points to an unhealed story." When we trace it back, we discover not monsters, but memories. The ignored child, the humiliated student, the overworked employee, the neglected friend. Each memory is a root. The storm may break branches, but if we nurture the roots with care, new leaves will sprout. This is the paradox: storms destroy, but they also prune. A tree after storm often grows stronger, shaped by resilience. Anger, when transformed, can deepen compassion. Having known the fire, we become gentle with others' flames. I once spoke to a teacher who said, "When my student shouts at me, I do not hear offense. I hear exhaustion. I hear the voice of someone lost." This perspective is like watching footprints on the sand being washed by the tide. The harsh imprint softens, dissolves. We remember words spoken in anger are rarely permanent truths. They are waves soon to fade. What then remains permanent? Not the insult, not the heat, not the quarrel. What remains is our response. Will we answer with another tide of bitterness, or with the stillness that allows the footprints to vanish naturally? The Buddha taught hatred never ends through hatred. Hatred ends through love. To practice this is to look beyond the mask, the fog, the eruption, and to see the wounded heart behind. Imagine two people shouting. From the outside, we see fire. But if we could look within, we would see children both longing to be understood, both clutching wounds they do not know how to express. Compassion is the act of seeing the child behind the mask. When we cultivate compassion, anger loses its fuel. It is as if we place cool water beside the volcano shade, beside the withered garden clarity, before the fogged mirror. Slowly, the eruption calms. The flowers revive, the reflection returns. Compassion is not naivete. It does not mean allowing harm endlessly. It means recognizing that those who hurt are themselves hurting. To act from this recognition is to build bridges, not walls. And this is the path the Buddha illuminated: not suppression, not indulgence, but transformation. Each breath is a key. Each mindful step is a gate opened. Each act of kindness is a book dusted and read with care. When we live this way, anger may still arise, but it will no longer govern. It will appear as a bell, cracked yet ringing, reminding us to return, to breathe, to embrace. And in this return, we discover that beneath every tide, every storm, every eruption, the ground of peace has always been waiting. Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. The Buddha. Anger often makes us believe we are pressed for time, that we must act now, retaliate now, answer now. Yet this urgency is an illusion. It is like looking at a clock with missing hands. The face is there, the numbers are visible, but there is no true measure of time. In anger, we mistake urgency for necessity, though nothing requires our immediate eruption. The Buddha reminded us between stimulus and response, there is always a pause. In that pause lies freedom. To miss the pause is to live enslaved. Imagine walking into a vast cave. You whisper a single word, and it returns to you as thunder. Anger does the same. It takes small slights and magnifies them until they seem overwhelming. A forgotten greeting becomes rejection. A careless phrase becomes insult. A delayed reply becomes betrayal. The cave is not malicious, it only amplifies. And so too does the mind when filled with rage. The tragedy is that we treat amplified echoes as truth. We believe the roar was real, forgetting it was born from our own whisper. But with awareness, we can see the cave for what it is. If we stop shouting, the echo stops. Silence reveals that the cave was never hostile, it was empty waiting. Anger also stretches reality like shadows at sunset. The same object appears elongated, monstrous when light is low. A glance or a tone of voice under the dim light of fear becomes towering and sinister. Yet when daylight returns, we see the shadow shrink to its true size. This is why the Buddha urged us to cultivate light. In awareness, shadows lose their terror. Relationships in anger become fragile, like walking across a bridge made of glass. Each word is a step. Each look is a weight. Step too harshly and cracks appear. A single misstep and the bridge shatters, leaving both stranded on opposite cliffs. If we walk with care, with gentleness, the bridge holds. But when it shatters, repair is possible only through patience. Glass cannot be forced back together with violence. It requires delicate hands, time, and care. So too with trust fractured by anger. Beneath anger, however, lies longing, like roots seeking water beneath dry soil. No matter how barren the surface, life presses downward, searching for nourishment. When we rage at others, often it is because we thirst for recognition, love, belonging. Anger is the dry soil, longing is the hidden root. When we realize this, our perception changes. Instead of seeing only aggression, we see a plea. See me, hear me, acknowledge me. I once witnessed a father berating his son for failing in school. The boy trembled, eyes downcast. Yet when the father paused, I asked him quietly, "What do you fear?" He admitted with tears, "I fear my son will suffer as I did." His anger was not hatred. It was fear wrapped in fire. The root sought water even if the soil appeared barren. The Buddha taught that understanding is like rain. When rain falls, the soil softens, the roots drink, and the tree revives. So too does compassion soften anger, nourishing the longing beneath. Anger can also be compared to a chisel against marble. Struck blindly, it chips, scars, destroys. But when wielded with patience, it shapes beauty, carving form from stone. The same energy of passion, when transformed, becomes creativity instead of destruction. History is filled with examples. Reformers, activists, visionaries who felt anger at injustice, yet did not allow it to consume them. They used its energy as a sculptor uses a chisel with purpose, precision, and vision. Without awareness, anger smashes. With awareness, it sculpts. Yet for most of us, anger leaves emptiness. After the argument ends, after the shouting subsides, we stand upon an empty stage. The actors, our words, our gestures, our accusations have departed. Only silence remains. We may win the scene, but the theater echoes hollow. Victory tastes bitter when the audience is gone. Have you felt that silence? After an argument, the house quiet. The door slammed, the phone left unanswered. It is the silence of an empty stage. Anger gives us performance, but robs us of connection. But peace too has its stage. It is not loud, not theatrical, but enduring. When love speaks softly, It echoes longer than the loudest rage. A teacher once told me, "Do not measure by who shouted louder. Measure by whose words are remembered after silence returns." Anger may roar, but wisdom whispers, and it is the whispers that linger. Consider the river. Over centuries it carves canyons into stone, not by violence, but by persistence. Anger may break suddenly like dynamite, but peace shapes landscapes quietly, enduringly. Which is more powerful, the explosion or the river that reshapes mountains? So too in our lives, explosions of rage may terrify, but it is gentle persistence, kindness, repeated compassion practiced, that sculpts the character of our days. The Buddha pointed again and again to this truth. Hatred never heals hatred. Only love, steady as a river, wears away the hardest stone. So when anger rises, we ask, will I be dynamite or will I be the river? The choice is always present, always within reach. And each time we choose the river, the canyon of our lives deepens, not with scars of violence, but with valleys of peace through which others may one day walk. If you are patient in one moment of anger, you will escape 100 days of sorrow. Chinese proverb. Anger often feels like being lost in a maze with no exit. We turn corner after corner, chasing justifications, building arguments, rehearsing what we will say. Yet each path leads us back to the same place, the center of our own hurt. No matter how many corridors we walk, the walls are our own creation. The more we wander, the more trapped we feel. The Buddha taught that suffering repeats when we do not see its true origin. In anger, we see only the other person's faults, forgetting the maze is built from our own walls. The way out is not through endless wandering, but through awareness rising above the maze, seeing its pattern from above. Awareness is like a storm lantern swinging in the dark. At first, the light wavers, barely cutting through shadows. But as we hold it steady, the outlines of the path emerge. Fear shrinks, and suddenly, what seemed endless is only a few steps. The lantern does not remove the storm, but it reminds us we can walk through without being lost. Anger convinces us that control lies in shouting and overpowering. But real control is gentler. Think of a kite. When the string is held with care, the kite soars gracefully, responding to every shift of wind. But when the string snaps, it tumbles aimlessly, tossed wherever the air pushes it. Anger is the snapping of the string. It feels like freedom, but it is actually chaos. True freedom is the steady hand that holds the thread. Often what we see in anger is only the tip of the iceberg. A word, a look, a gesture. These are the visible tip. But beneath lies a mass of hidden pain, years of neglect, layers of insecurity, stories of failure. We collide not with the small piece above water, but with the vast weight beneath. This is why anger feels so disproportionate. The argument is never just about the present. A woman once told me she argued bitterly with her friend about money. Yet when she traced it back, she realized her fury was not about the sum. It was about years of feeling unappreciated, of always giving more. The iceberg was not the transaction, it was the story beneath. The Buddha invited us to look beneath the surface. What you fight outside is often what is unresolved inside. To see this is to realize that the face we oppose is often our own reflection. Imagine striking a wall of glass. We see another on the other side and lash out, but the hand that bleeds is ours. The glass reflects our own expression, twisted by rage. The other may exist, yes, but our suffering is magnified by our projection. This is why compassion begins with looking inward. Before blaming the face in the glass, ask what in me is being reflected. Anger disrupts harmony. It is like an orchestra where each instrument plays without listening to the others. The violins rush, the drums pound, the flutes waver, all convinced of their own importance. The result is noise. Yet with one conductor awareness, the instruments fall into rhythm and harmony returns. Our lives are like that orchestra. Each emotion, each thought is an instrument. Anger arises when awareness is absent, when no conductor leads. But when mindfulness lifts the baton, the chaos softens into music. Sometimes anger is not expressed outwardly, but hidden. It is like letters never sent piling in a drawer. Each one carries words, unsaid grievances, untold. We believe we are keeping peace by not speaking, but the drawer grows heavy. And one day it bursts open, scattering letters everywhere in confusion. The practice is not to deny letters, but to read them with compassion before they pile too high. When we sit with our feelings, naming them, breathing with them, we are reading those letters aloud. They no longer rot in the drawer. They are understood, and then they can rest. Life constantly offers us chances to practice this. Someone cuts in line, someone insults, someone forgets. These moments seem small, but they are opportunities to choose whether to hoard letters or release them. Each time we release, the drawer lightens. And what of grudges we have carried for years? The desert wind reminds us no footprint is permanent. What seemed carved forever in our hearts can be erased overnight if we allow it. Anger tells us the footprint is eternal. Compassion shows us the shifting sands. I met a man who hated his brother for 30 years. One night, he dreamed they were children again, building castles in the sand. The waves came and erased everything, leaving smooth shore. He woke weeping, realizing his anger too could be washed away. The memory of love was not lost. It was simply hidden beneath layers of sand. This is the truth the Buddha revealed. Anger is impermanent, like footprints. It feels deep, but it is only on the surface. Beneath lies the enduring shore of peace. When we trust this, we stop carving wounds into stone and allow the wind to heal us. So the practice is simple, yet profound. Carry the lantern, hold the kite's string, look beneath the iceberg, read the letters. Let the desert wind do its work. In each image lies the same truth. Anger is not our master. It is a visitor. And peace is our home. In the end, only three things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. The Buddha. Anger distorts perspective. It makes pawns appear as kings and minor offenses as monumental betrayals. On the chessboard of life, we often mistake a single careless move as the end of the game. Yet if we step back, we see the match is long, and one move does not decide everything. But anger narrows vision. We see only the pawn before us, swelling it into a tyrant. When we live this way, even small breezes become tempests. Like wind chimes in a storm, our emotions clash noisily, creating chaos where there might have been melody. Anger is not the chime itself. It is the storm that makes every piece collide. If the wind calms, the same chimes return to gentle music. Consider a painting. Hours of careful strokes create balance and beauty. Then one rash swipe of paint across the canvas smears it all. Anger is that careless hand. What we built patiently, trust, affection, respect, can be smeared in seconds. The canvas is not ruined forever, but the mark remains, and repair requires patience and skill. Relationships under anger are fragile, like walking across a rope bridge above an abyss. Each harsh word is a gust of wind. Each accusation is another sway. Step too hard, and the bridge snaps. Yet if we walk lightly, carefully holding the ropes of compassion, even the most fragile bridge can carry us across. But many of us do not walk lightly. We bottle our anger instead. We seal it tight like a jar. From the outside, it looks contained safe. But inside, fermentation begins. The pressure builds gases form, and one day the jar bursts, spilling sourness everywhere. Suppressed anger is no less dangerous than expressed rage. In fact, it often explodes with greater force. The Buddha urged us not to suppress nor to indulge, but to transform. Transformation begins with recognition. If the jar is opened with care, if the contents are aired and understood, it does not explode. Instead, it becomes nourishment, like fermented food shared at the table. Anger deceives us into believing its shadows are real. It is like watching a shadow puppet play and mistaking it for life itself. We see figures on the wall, fierce and exaggerated, and believe they are truth. But if we turn, we find the puppets are only cutouts, and the fire behind them is what gives them form. Our anger is the fire. Our projections are the puppets. Reality is far gentler than the shadows it casts. I remember a woman who spent years angry at her mother for never saying, "I'm proud of you." Every silence became a puppet. She disapproves of me. She doesn't love me. Yet when her mother was old and frail, she confessed softly, "I was always proud. I just never learned how to say it." The shadows dissolved, leaving the real mother behind. So often, anger is this shadows mistaken for reality. But like snow covering tracks, anger hides truths only temporarily. In winter, the trail seems erased. But come spring, when snow melts, the path reappears. Beneath our anger, the tracks of love remain waiting to be uncovered. No quarrel erases the years of care. The snow may hide, but it cannot destroy. The Buddha said, "Love is stronger than hatred, light stronger than darkness." Even in the heaviest snowfall, the sun returns. The warmth of compassion melts layers of resentment, revealing again the paths that connect us. And so we must become like lighthouses, not fighting the fog, not shouting at ships, but standing steady, radiating presence. The lighthouse does not chase away storms. It guides through them. Anger may cloud vision, but awareness shines steadily, reminding us of direction. A teacher once said, "When you are angry, ask, 'Am I the storm, or am I the lighthouse?' The storm rages, but passes. The lighthouse endures. To be a lighthouse is not passive. It is active endurance, steady compassion, unshakable clarity. It does not deny the storm, but it does not become it either. It shines. And in shining, it saves not only others, but ourselves. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die." The Buddha. Every journey must arrive at its closing chapter. We have wandered through the valleys of anger, stood amid its storms, and uncovered the truths hidden beneath its masks. Now, as the story turns its final page, we are invited to release what was never meant to be carried forever. Imagine a lantern released into the night sky. At first, our hands hesitate, clinging to the fragile frame. But when we let go, it rises, drifting higher, carrying with it our burdens, our resentments, our unspoken words. From below, it becomes a point of light among the stars, a reminder that even anger, once released, can turn into something luminous. Life is a book. Anger is but one chapter, not the entire story. Yet how often do we mistake a chapter for the whole? The Buddha taught impermanence, so we might remember no chapter is eternal. Even the darkest pages are followed by lighter ones if we turn them. To cling is to reread sorrow endlessly. To release is to continue toward completion. Like a river joining the ocean, peace is our destiny. No matter how many twists, falls, or floods the river endures, its end is always union with the vast. Anger may be the rocks that splinter flow, but eventually water finds its way, smoothing even the hardest stone. To live wisely is to trust this flow, to stop clutching at each obstacle, and to let ourselves move toward vastness. Consider stained glass in morning light. Alone, each shard seems broken, jagged, meaningless, but when light pours through the fragments become beauty. Our angers too are shards, moments of fracture. When compassion shines through, they reveal patterns we could not see before. Even our suffering becomes part of a greater design. We are like travelers who have carried heavy packs across mountains. Anger is the weight of stones we picked up along the way, insults, betrayals, disappointments. We thought each necessary, yet with every step, our backs bent lower. At the journey's end, when we finally set the pack down, we wonder, why did I carry so much for so long? Freedom was not found in conquering mountains, but in laying down the load. Autumn trees know this truth. They do not resist when leaves turn brittle. They release them to the wind. What looks like loss is actually preparation. By shedding, they survive winter and bloom again in spring. Anger too must be shed. To hold on to each withered leaf is to stunt our renewal. To let go is to prepare for blossoming. When anger dissolves, clarity emerges. It is like standing at a mountain's base, shrouded in mist, believing the summit lost forever. Yet with patience, the fog clears, and the peak shines in sunlight. Our hearts, once clouded by resentment, reveal heights we had forgotten we could reach. And then, like actors after a long performance, we bow. The stage of anger has had its scenes, its drama, its noise, but the final act is silence, humility, and gratitude. To bow is to acknowledge the play without clinging to it. The curtain falls, but life continues beyond the theater. So, dear listener, as we close this journey, remember, anger is not your identity. It is a visitor. It comes and goes. You are the lantern, the book, the river, the stained glass, the traveler, the tree, the mountain, the actor. You are more than anger. You are the awareness that sees it, the compassion that transforms it, the peace that remains after it passes. The Buddha's path was not about erasing emotion, but about meeting it with wisdom. When anger rises, breathe. When resentment whispers, listen with compassion. When shadows appear, bring the lantern of awareness. Slowly, the heart remembers it was never meant to be a battlefield, but a home. And so we part here, not with finality, but with continuation. For though this script ends, your journey does not. Carry what resonates, release what weighs you down, and walk gently. May you be like the river flowing toward vastness. May you be like the tree shedding to renew. May you be like the lantern rising to light. Thank you for walking this path with me. Until we meet again, may peace be your constant companion.